We have been hearing about that for weeks, for months on end, that Lane Kiffin, now formerly of Ole Miss, was going to be the top target at Florida, at LSU, at many other jobs around college football. The Lane Kiffin saga came to a conclusion of some sort on Sunday when it became official that he is taking the job at LSU. There had been much debate over whether or not Lane was going to leave. We reported here, not through any insider information, but just through common sense, that if he decided he wanted to stay at Ole Miss, he would have told us well before the Egg Bowl. There was no need to drag this out with all the fanfare and the hullabaloo. It seemed as though he was gone. The question was really, is he going to stick around long enough? Is Ole Miss going to allow him to stick around long enough to coach the Rebels through the playoff? He put out a statement, made it fairly well known, I would say, through that, as well as in the interview he did with ESPN's Marty Smith, that it was Keith Carter's decision at Ole Miss to not let him coach it out and finish what he started at Ole Miss. We can talk about the merits of that, Dan, here in a second. But your impression of LSU now getting Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss?
Well, first of all, I thought that was a sweet little hug from Marty Smith to Lane Kiffin at the end of that interview. I don't know if you noticed that. That's what you see a lot of when reporters are, on the ground doing that dirty work. Is just like, hey, you made this decision. Why'd you do that? All right. Hey, go get him, Tiger. That was unexpected.
Honest reporting, right?
Yeah, of
Marty
course.
Smith. Honest reporting.
Yeah. I'm on the ground here in Taipei. Good luck. So anyway, what did I take away from it? Look, why does Lane Kiffin leave a playoff team? Because he wants to, right? Like, and I'm not talking about specifically ahead of this year's playoff, but Ole Miss is a playoff program. Why does Lane Kiffin decide that he does no longer want to coach a program that is built to go to the playoff many years? Because he wanted to, because he either stopped having fun or stopped enjoying his time in Oxford, or some combination of that, and feeling like LSU is a bigger, better place for him to soar to new heights. I don't know. It all strikes me as like nobody forced you to do this, and despite the set of College Game Day having his back as for his desire to coach, for the LSU coach to coach Ole Miss and try to steal players, as was reported, his threat and coaches. It was all very strange to me, Ty. The whole episode was strange, but at the same time, it's Lane Kiffin, so perfectly normal. So it was just, guys, you know how this is going to end at LSU, right? It's going to end worse than this. It's going to end so much worse. And we all know it already. We're all prepared for it. And it's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, look, he left because he views it as a more prestigious job. He left because this has been who Lane Kiffin has always been. I'm not even vilifying him for jumping around. I mean, he's talked about it in the past. He grew up with a coach as a father. They moved 17 times or some crazy number like that. Sure. This has just always been who the guy is. The other thing that I would add is he's never been, and I'll give credit to Bruce Feldman because I watched the Audible, the show that he does with Ralph and Stu over at The Athletic. Mm-hmm. And he said it on the podcast that they did yesterday morning, and he kind of like beat me to the punch. Lane Kiffin's a bad breaker-upper. We've seen this everywhere. So this should come as no great surprise. What I do find funny, as you talk about the LSU coach coaching Ole Miss, I don't know if you saw some of the details of Lane's contract that have since surfaced since he took this job at LSU, but LSU is paying him to coach at Ole Miss, right? They are paying him his postseason bonus, even though he is no longer with Ole Miss. So if Ole Miss goes on to win a national championship, whatever escalators were present in that Ole Miss contract, pending how far they go in the postseason, Lane Kiffin will be rewarded for that. Yeah. Given the fact that he was previously there, even though he is now at LSU. So credit Jimmy Sexton, the agent, for getting it done, for pulling one over on another athletic department. They get a good coach. They get a good coach in Lane Kiffin. They also get something of a circus, but that's come as no great surprise to anybody who has signed on with Lane Kiffin in the past. What I do find interesting now is this conversation on whether he should have or shouldn't have coached Ole Miss. I think if you're Ole Miss, what you don't want is the optics of the entire stadium booing your coach.
Right.
As you host a home playoff game.
Correct.
Okay? Cut out all of like the legalese and the ethical stuff and whether or not you should do this as a hiring or HR practice. But the optics, the sheer optics of having a guy on the sidelines that might be booed out of the stadium seems like it's a bad thing. Yeah. And I would not want that if I were Keith Carter. So I understand that this is prickly. I understand that this is definitely an unprecedented situation for a guy to just straight up and leave before his team kicks it off in the 12-team field. But I understand, frankly, where all parties are coming from, and I think I side a little bit more with Keith Carter and Ole Miss.
As do I. And look, we're going to see Eric Morris at North Texas for the postseason, are we not?
We are.
We're going to see John Sumrall at Tulane, are we not?
We are.
We've seen coordinators stay. Dan Lanning stayed at Georgia through their national championship run before taking over Oregon. This is different. It is different when, however you want to, name Ole Miss and LSU as rivals, right? It's not on the level of the Iron Bowl. It's not on the level of the biggest rivalries in the sport, but it is a rivalry. It is a meaningful annual matchup. And that a coach would leave one school for the other, we really haven't seen that in a major conference on this level. Like Sark left Washington for USC, but that's not the same. It's just not the same. And so I can understand if you're Ole Miss, right? You feel sort of jerked around. 2 months ago, you were watching your coach as the subject of an E60. I don't need to play this again.
And that's life.
But it was all about how yoga had changed him and centered him. And now LSU has hired 2 consecutive troublesome coaches who've been changed by yoga.
The yoga card. They went back to the well with the yoga card twice. Incredible.
And look, it's going to end at LSU with a statement or a quote that is going to go along the lines of, it's going to start with, look, in retrospect. Like, no, not in retrospect. Everybody knows how this is going to go. It's a question of like the juice being worth the squeeze for LSU, right? If he wins you a national championship, you deal with whatever the fallout is at the end.
You make that trade. I would make that trade too. Yeah.
Right. And so there's no apologizing if he is able to bring you back to that, hallowed ground that LSU expects from its program. So, yeah, it's all just an insane circus, and I get it. And the funny stuff too is just like Nick Saban on game day and Kirk Herbstreit on game day. I think I saw Booger McFarland, like ESPN circled the wagons to be like, let him coach, come on, do it for the kids. And then there was a quote, it was like, the players full on hate him. It was just like, they are very happy he's gone after just the way everything has transpired these past few days. And
I mean, do you blame him?
No, not at all. I just thought it was funny that they were all just like, think of the kids, let them play for the coach that brought him here. And then immediately when everything went down, they were just like, F that guy. So,
yeah, I mean, look, I would probably feel similarly, and not to play too much of devil's advocate here, but
sure,
I was thinking about this a lot. What is Lane Kiffin? I mean, Lane Kiffin's been a very successful coach.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. And I understand why he is a target for many of these openings, or was a target, and will probably continue to be in the future.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin's won like a bunch of news cycles and a couple of recruiting cycles.
Mm-hmm.
What else has he won?
No, I mean, it's also, but it's
like, what else, what is he worth all of this time and energy that people have put in? A good coach,
well,
creative offensive mind, but like what are we like hanging our hat on here in terms of like hard accolades that make all of this trouble worth it?
You're hanging your hat on the fact that he'll take your money, and the very best coaches in this sport, whoever you consider them to be, didn't seem as willing to take your money. And in a market that has, Penn State and Florida, and obviously now Ole Miss opened and shut pretty quickly. Michigan State opened up. Like, there's just a lot of big jobs and big conferences, UCLA out west, that opened up. And a lot of the perceived top candidates across the country either recently took a new job. Like Ryan Day wasn't taking the LSU job. Dan Lanning wasn't taking the LSU job. Mike Elko wasn't taking, like, all those in-demand jobs or in-demand coaches. Kurt Cignetti wasn't taking the LSU job. They weren't coming. And Lane Kiffin will. There's like the old, I I wish I could attribute this to the correct person, but like the old joke of like, Shaq will take $10 million from fascism if the check clears, right? They're just like, Lane Kiffin's willing to listen. He's willing to take your money, and he's willing to win double-digit games at your university or college. And that's why all of this, it's a leverage play. That Lane Kiffin had a ton of leverage because of the Florida interest and obviously the Ole Miss interest. He was willing to listen to LSU, considered LSU to be a step up. And so you do whatever it takes because LSU didn't want to hire John Sumrall. LSU didn't want to take your pick of, Alex Golesh, guys who are good coaches, legitimately good coaches, but they didn't feel like they were of the stature of the LSU job. And so, you are what your options are. And that's the position Lane Kiffin, pretty advantageously found himself in.
Well, look, this is not me saying it is a bad hire. There is a reason.
But I get what you're saying.
Everybody wanted Lane Kiffin. I completely understand the draw to Lane Kiffin. A, you know what you're signing up for.
Mm-hmm.
B, let's see him do it now. Right? If he wants to create this kind of circus to go to LSU, then you got to put your money where your mouth is. Mm-hmm. And he's got a lot of money. By the way, despite all of the hollow talk on the LSU side about not wanting to commit to irresponsible contracts and change the model moving forward.
Yeah.
The buyout for Lane Kiffin is more than it was for Brian Kelly, and it is fully guaranteed.
What is
they
it?
also talk out of two sides of their mouth.
What's the number?
I didn't see the official number. I just saw that it's more than Brian Kelly, and it's fully guaranteed.
And you know what, Ty? That's life.
And that's life.
It's life.
Okay? you get what you can. He's worth what somebody's willing to pay you.
Yeah. By the way, way back when, this is my final point on Kiffin, and then we got like 80 other coaches to talk about.
No, that's fine.
Way back when, in the year of our Lord 2010, when we were younger and more full of life and had fewer grays, and I don't think we were married at that. We definitely weren't married at that.
Ty maintained 3 girlfriends at a time.
Sure.
Unbelievable.
Way back when, right after Kiffin left Tennessee for USC, you and I set an imaginary line.
Oh,
the over-under 5.5. 5.5 total head coaching jobs over the course of Lane Kiffin's career. At the time that we said it, we thought it was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
He just hit it. This is head coaching stop number 6, if you account for the brief time that he was with the Raiders.
Mm-hmm, of course.
I had some listeners reach out to me and remind me of this. I didn't even recall it. It was 15 years ago that we set this line, and it just hit.
Yeah.
Amazing.